Well, now listen, we've been getting some questions from viewers. This is from Maurice. People seem to forget that all of this Andrew drama has only come out after the late Queen died. Since then, millions of Epstein-related files have been released and changed our thoughts and opinions on both Andrew and Fergie. I don't think it's fair, says Maurice, to take out any frustrations on people like William or Kate. I personally think it's down to the late Queen giving in to Andrew and Charles not being strong enough. This saga has been going on for 15 years. It's not William, it's the older brigade. That's tricky, isn't it?
That's a very interesting question from Maurice. I think on the one hand, there are those people who feel that the late Queen should have done more, could have done more, protected Andrew. And actually, as a courtier, in fact, a number of senior courtiers said to me at the time, not now, Richard, at the time, this is in 2013, 2014, they said to me that Andrew is her Achilles heel. So there's that. On the other side, there are many people who feel it's very unfair to blame the late Queen, that she was a mother doing, what mothers do, protecting their children, and that actually she did react pretty brutally in 2019 after that Newsnight interview when she made him step back as a working royal. Also, she was instrumental with her then Private Secretary Sir Christopher Geit in making him step back as UK Trade Ambassador in 2011.
So there were others around her who were recognising this was potentially a weakness?
Yes, others around her were recognising it was a weakness. I think some members of the family, of the royal family, perhaps feel that the late Queen could have done more because, unfortunately, as we said before the break, potentially this is going to be, the Andrew issue, is going to be the defining top line of the Carolean era.
Ooh,
and
Carolean, get you.
I know, get me. I know it's the posh name for King Charles. I had to look that one up. I feel very sorry. I think a lot of people will feel very sorry for Charles and William and Camilla, the Queen, and Princess Catherine, because on the one hand, this is a family drama played out on the most public of stages. And this is, in some ways, nothing to do with Charles, Camilla, William and Catherine et al. But in other ways, it's everything to do with them.
I mean, anyone can identify, I think, with a mother and a favourite child, right? You would do anything, wouldn't you, to protect them from... And also hard for you to admit that perhaps they're not in the world standing what they are in your standing. But there's a real problem here, isn't there? Now, I can see how there would be an advantage, perhaps, in, if you could say, the fault lay in a previous reign. But the Queen banked so much goodwill for the monarchy that you wouldn't want to do anything which devalued that currency, right?
Absolutely. I think it's such a tricky tightrope if the members of the family or if the palace PR have decided that they want to try and blame, in inverted commas, the late Queen, because she was, as a courtier once said to me, she's bomb-proof. At the end of her reign, because she'd reigned for so long with such devotion, it almost felt as if she was, Dieu mon droit, that's the motto of the royal family, it almost felt as if she wasn't just on the right of God, she was almost on the same level. And so I think that it's very tricky to sort of blame the late Queen, because then if you do that, you're kind of casting aspersions on everything that she did. On the other hand, there is a lot of merit in that position, because if you I mean she was an amazing woman and an amazing monarch, but if you look at actually what some of the things she did in 2011, when this story first kind of burst onto the front pages of the newspapers with that interview with Virginia Giuffre and that picture, infamous picture of Andrew with his hand round Virginia Giuffre's, Roberts as she was, bare waist. What did the late Queen do in the months after that, Richard? She gave Andrew, her most favourite son, the highest honour that the monarch can possibly give.
Business as usual.
Yeah, well, not even business as usual. She made him a Knight Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order, which is the robes that you see on Garter Day when he was, sort of parading in the flummery.
Reserved for the most senior of senior royals, isn't it?
Absolutely. You don't even get it just by being a member of the royal family. It's the monarch's direct gift. So I think we have to ask ourselves, what was the culture within the institution that enabled Andrew to be protected?
And of course, we must remember that Prince Andrew has denied any accusations of wrongdoing.
That was a great question from Maurice, and we love to hear your questions or your comments. Please do email in to royals@spirit-studios.com, and Richard and I will endeavour to answer all of your questions. And don't forget, if you're watching us on YouTube, please do hit subscribe to Catching Up the Royals to make sure that you are always caught up with the latest royal news.
This one's just running and running, Emily, and I'm wondering, with your experience, what is it like backstage at the palace when a crisis like this hits?
Well, they're actually pretty calm. I remember during when Harry and Meghan, the last kind of, I suppose, this is not, comparisons are invidious, Richard, and I'm not comparing what's happening with Andrew, but just the sort of the levers and the machinery when the crisis hits the palace. I guess the last time this happened was in 2020 when Harry and Meghan announced that they were leaving. People remain very calm. Calmness is a highly prized temperament with those who work in the palace and civil servants. If this hasn't been done already, and I really hope it has, but maybe it hasn't been done already, they will be going through all their own documentation, go through all their emails, who knew what when, members of staff, former members of staff, and also I think
an internal inquiry.
An internal inquiry, briefing notes for the principals, William, Prince of Wales, and obviously King Charles. The King and Prince William will also be involved in meetings to discuss the strategy going forward. What can they do? But I do think, and I know that Prince William has already looked at all of this. I mean, he's told us this in his own words, but not pertaining to obviously the Andrew Mountbatten story. But I think that they need to look at the culture. So why was Andrew protected? A lot of people are asking, why was Andrew protected for so long? Why were young women waved into Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle without proper logged in security? They were just... Apparently, Andrew would say, Mrs. Windsor's arriving, can you just show her in? Mrs. Windsor. There's now allegations from former government ministers, from the coalition. So I think that the palace, if they haven't done so already, have to have their own internal inquiry. Whether we will ever learn what the results of that are, Richard, I doubt it, because of course there was an internal inquiry into staff bullying by the Duchess of Sussex. That was never, ever, those allegations were never released. And
it's interesting about why didn't they ask the questions? Because the questions hadn't quite formed. I was reading up about I was at Pitch at the Palace through my involvement with the University of Northampton.
And remind us when that was.
That was 2014, I think. Now, I don't remember. I went there because University of Northampton puts a lot of investment in getting our students out into entrepreneurial roles and stuff. So it was exactly the kind of thing that we were interested in doing. I don't remember having anything really of substance in my mind, any particular concerns about Prince Andrew. And I assumed, as he was then, that all this stuff that subsequently came out had not yet come out. But when I look at the dates, actually, there had been discussion about it before then. But for some reason, I didn't even know that Prince Andrew was involved with it, I think. We just went there and he made a speech. Actually, rather a good speech. It sort of surprised me that it was a good speech. But I think perhaps that tells you that we hadn't yet reached critical mass with our concerns about Prince Andrew. They hadn't quite reached that point where all of a sudden you start thinking, why is this happening?
I think that the Me Too movement in 2020-21 as well has had quite a big effect on people's attitude. When that interview was first published in 2011 with Virginia, I think that's such a good point you make about Pitch at Palace and how people felt, because I don't think it had really permeated the public consciousness. Yes, there have been newspaper reports, but there's still that feeling that monarchy could do no wrong. And surely it can't be right. Surely a member of the royal family couldn't be guilty of this.
I think maybe there was some concern about Prince Andrew, but it was outweighed by the significance of the event. And it was only really after the interview with Emily Maitlis that all of a sudden you thought, oh gosh, this is really bad.
Yeah. And as a courtier said to me, I mean, was the late Queen expected to go through every email that her son was sending? And I'm sure, were she still to be alive, she would be devastated.
And also, would people have perhaps wanted to protect her from perhaps one of the less savoury aspects of alleged behaviour of his part? I don't know.